G'day guys, welcome back to Beers and Break-Evens, our second episode of the year and our first of our positional analysis. We're going to get stuck into the hookers today. Probably not the funnest position to go through if we're being completely honest here, but there is probably a little bit more to talk about than what we thought there would be, to be fair. Bringing in my co-host, the master of disaster, the king of sting, T-Rex, welcome in.
Your favourite topic, mate, hookers.
Yes.
Great every year.
Hooker pun, eh?
Works funny every time.
It's never going to miss.
It's you're right, it's probably not the most exciting position, but it is a very important position. We'll get to that shortly on why, just around basically the structure that you opt for with your number nines. And there's a lot of different ways that you can go, whether you're spending up, whether you're going cheapies, that's going to impact your entire team. So I do think it's a low-key important position.
Now, Timmy, I probably should have checked pre-show, but Matty, are you on camera and have mic?
Yes.
Matty's sitting in the shed over there in the CBA Centre of Excellence. Good to have you in, mate.
It's great to be here once again. First time in this producer's desk, so yeah, pretty cool.
Now, you will notice throughout the year, that's where the Rook will
Yeah.
sit. Now, the Rook currently on the Pacific Ocean, sitting back, murdering a couple of pina coladas. But we're keen to have the Rook back in.
We are. I mean, second podcast of the season goes on a Pacific Island cruise. There's some arrogant areas from Rook.
It's pretty telling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the rookie skipping a preseason training session.
Yeah.
Unheard of.
Yeah, if it was David Nofaluma, there'd be a terminated contract.
Without a
Fortunately, we're not the Tigers admin, and we're a bit more patient with Rook.
Now, Matty, obviously with the Rook coming in as our producer over the next couple of weeks, you've run your eye over the Rook's form. What are your thoughts?
Pretty good start actually. Like I think it took me a lot longer to get my head around things. So yeah, it could be a rookie of the year type situation here.
Rookie of the year, I love that.
Yeah, that's good. I've before we get stuck into things, I've got a bone to pick with Matty the Water Boy, but I've got an interesting question, and it was alerted to me by a good mate of mine, Brett Oaten, actually this morning. So we recorded the first episode of the SC Playbook podcast last night, covered the South Sydney Rabbitohs season preview among with a few other teams, and had a good chat about Tallis Duncan. Matty, a very big fan of his, quoted as saying Cameron Murray 2.0, which you can imagine got me pretty aroused, Roo. But I got roasted in a message for referring to him as a South Sydney junior this morning. Sydney Roosters junior. Matty, can you confirm or deny?
Yeah, he was one of the ones we poached from the Roosters. So.
Yeah, you were very quiet about that one when we were chatting about Tallis Duncan.
Tallis, played his Harold Matts at the Roosters. He still actually plays for the Coogee Dolphins, so definitely not a South Sydney junior.
Wow.
Yeah, well, they don't have many juniors, so we'll give him that one. But I'm glad we stole one from them for once.
Sia Wong, Angus Crichton, Nat Butcher, the list goes on, and Joey Manu.
Do the Bunnies produce any of their own talent, or is it just all poaching from the Roosters?
Wow. I have nothing to say to that. That is just so ridiculous.
Now, let's get stuck into hookers. Are you too sweet? Are we good to...
We're good. I mean, he still has my shirt.
Exchanged that T-shirt yet?
Yeah, he still has my shirt, so...
And Matty also produces my podcast on Tuesday night, so I'm sorry and I take it all back. I need you.
Have you started to think about packing the bag for Magic Round yet?
Still packed from last year. I've got my shirt in there.
Has it been washed?
No.
It's wild that you could triple what you packed last year and still be under packed. It's incredibly impressive.
For the record, with this shirt story, I've copped a lot of grief over it. It wasn't me thinking I could get away with only having one shirt. It was poor packing. It was more planning rather than my arrogance of thinking I'd get away with one shirt over 3 days. I'm hopeless, but I'm not that bad.
You got some work to do out there, Loz. Some serious work to do.
I know.
Plenty of yards. All right. Let's get into hookers. Mm-hmm. Now, Harry Grant. Actually, no, let's talk strategy first. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. What are you sort of thinking as far as you've obviously got 2 hooker slots there? Not many duels available this year. There was a couple that we could sort of work with last year. Not much doing this year. You're thinking cheapy, you're thinking gun, you're thinking gun cheapy. What are you sort of looking at the moment?
My early thoughts are 1 gun, 1 cheapy. I want that consistent number 9 just to to play and get good points off each week. The last probably season or two, it has been not the most exciting position. I do feel like there's still some upside in there, and statistically speaking, it probably hasn't shown it too much with the better hookers being around that 65 to probably 70 average. But I do think there are tons in the better hookers in the game. Harry Grant, Damien Cook, potentially sort of Jeremy Marshall-King, and outside of those 3, it's sort of, I won't say slim pickings, but you're downgrading from probably the top 3 to start this season. I'm thinking probably 1 gun and 1 cheapy at this stage. That being said, when you've got a team looking at trying to get guys like Nathan Cleary and Nico Hines in at top dollar, along with Kalen Pong or a couple of others, maybe it is a position where you go a little bit cheaper early on, and provided the right number 9s come along to start the season, I'm not against going maybe not as much cheapies, but mid-range options around that 300 to 400k mark. We'll get to who that they might be shortly, but if the roles are there, I'm not against the double mid-range or a double cheapy, but I'm thinking 1 high, 1 low.
I think that's what worries me the most, mate. A lot of people going or talking about cheapy or just going 1 cheapy. None of them are safe as houses to me. That's the problem, and my worry is that if you get into hooker and you're at 300k and your hooker's doing sweet FA, where are you going to produce that money from to move them on to someone you want? I don't want to say the 2 words that will give us nightmares again, but Sonny Luke. I mean, I'll take part responsibility for that situation. Only part, because I don't take responsibility for many things.
It's a big part, but still only a part.
Still only a part, yeah. But like Sonny Luke's a cracking example. I had him all fucking year because I couldn't move away from him. A lot of people held on to him and he became an AE nightmare because where the hell were you going to free up? Okay, where am I going to have a spare 500k to move Sonny Luke to someone that I fucking want? It just became a nightmare, and I personally don't think there's enough talent in hooker to finish the season with 2 guns. I think there's every chance I end up going down the same avenue with enough later in the year.
Yeah.
To piss you off for nothing more.
Just do it very late, mate. Don't kill me this early on in the season. and that's the thing. Like my concern with going, whether you go one of the 2 Eels hookers and like a Jaden Brayley, you get 3 rounds into the comp and you've got a hooker that's sharing a 50, 30-minute rotation there and punching out 35s and 40s when there's a Harry Grant, Damien Cook, Jeremy Marshall-King that's averaging 70 to 75 to start the year, some big points being missed out on there. That's my concern. That being said, if you can find that mid-range hooker who you start and he averages even 50 for you or makes you 100, 150k and just ticks along while you build squad value, it could be a masterstroke. Lots to play out in the preseason. Obviously around the sort of few of the guys that I just mentioned, that the mid-rangers, the cheapies, round 1 team list, vital. Parramatta in particular, is there going to be a shared hooker role? How many minutes do we expect Phoenix Crossland to take from Jaden Brayley? Time will tell.
And that's, going into round 1, the only guys that I am confident play 80 minutes are probably Reece Robson and Blake Brayley.
Yeah. I am easing to the idea of, because there is this shared hooker rotation coming in more and more in the game, even around Harry Grant, potentially Jeremy Marshall-King, maybe 60 to 65 minutes is okay. But if you're playing 60 to 65, you have to have attacking upside. You can't be doing it in base.
Yeah, I don't think we're far off shifting our mindset from SuperCoach as well to just accepting 65 is where you expect to get.
Yeah.
And, even the 80-minute guys that I just mentioned, Reece and Blake, they still just don't. And, even Damien Cook, a guy that's played 80 minutes the last few years, Peter Mamazelis re-signed the other day. I think there is every chance he plays minutes off that bench.
We sat here a couple of weeks ago and he wasn't in my 17, and then as soon as he re-signed for 3 years, they completely flipped it for me.
If you re-sign for 1 year, I'm not as worried, but 3 years, he's got to have some sort of confirmation that he's going to feature.
There must be a plan in place for him. Yeah. There has to be. I would assume so. So, yeah, it's going to be one of those wait and see type situations, but, I get the feeling he's going to play this year.
Makes it very, very difficult. Mate, anything else you want to touch on with strategy and whatnot with Hooker before we dive into, guys?
No, all good, mate. I think that sort of covered it, and it will be a big talking point throughout the preseason which way we go with it. So as more news unfolds, we'll hook in.
Just sitting here looking at this list we're about to go through, and how much did we take for granted an 80-minute hooker at Melbourne who goal kicked in a top 4 team every single week? Like, was Hooker always fucked and Cameron Smith just made it look good?
Possibly. I know, like, thinking back to the day, Robbie Farah was always a really good alternate option, but, like, he jarred a lot of attacking stats as well, also played 80. It was kind of only ever those two,
It was only ever those two, let's be honest here.
But, yeah, an 80-minute big work rate, like Cameron Smith, oh, good Lord.
Yeah, just not fair.
What year did you retire? 2020?
2020, yeah.
Yeah, far out. Didn't we ever take it for granted?
Fucking oath.
So Cam Smith, average score per game, 2020, 79. He would have been, 35 or something at the time?
Yeah.
79, 74 in 2019, 64 2018, 75 in 2017, 78 in 2016. And there would have been... So just going through his 2020 season very quickly, he had 4 tons with a top score of 136. He had... 1 score under 49, and that was a 34, and it was in 28 minutes because he got injured. So essentially his lowest score of the year was 49.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I will never forget, we had draft day one year and Cameron Smith was rumoured to miss the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. And I remember because of that, fucking ridiculous, everyone just left him. And I remember he got 1 pick away from me getting Cameron Smith as my second pick. And the guy before got him, which made complete sense. But I just sat there and went, you fucking moron. How did you let this happen?
It's unbelievable.
Shocked me Cameron Smith played round 1.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, of course.
Wild.
So Robbie Farah, 2019, who I'm like, was, probably the only real alternate option, Cam Smith. 2019, average 54, 2018, 62, 2017, 43, 52 in 2016, 58 in 2015. Like, Cam Smith, make a comeback, mate.
Wild.
We need you.
And you know what? He would walk in right now and be the best SuperCoach option. 100%. Yeah. All right, let's start at the top, mate. HG, Harry Grant, CBA class of 2019. One of our favourite players to watch in this competition, apart from those 3 games a year where he dry fucks us in Origin. Outside of that, we love Harry Grant. $750K. It's a lot of money to spend at hooker, but is there any argument that he isn't the premium option? Talk to me.
No, there's not. He's absolutely the premium option. There's upside to a guy like Jeremy Marshall-King off a bit of an injury-interrupted season last year, but Harry Grant is the number 1 hooker. I think I owned him the entire season last year. I don't think I traded him out even over the Origin period or anything. He didn't get a lot of rest, which was fantastic for SuperCoach.
Yeah.
And it paid off, like saved trades, had consistent scoring. But there's far from any assurance of that happening again. You're paying $750K for him. He's. I think I'd pretty confidently say he's going to be the top scoring hooker by the end of the season.
I'm very confident in saying he's going to be the top scoring hooker. Where he fits as far as top scorers in the competition, or where he fits as far as top scorers for guys I'm going to pay over $700K for, I don't know if it makes complete sense to me.
It's difficult. And the other big thing is, we saw in the back end of last year, he was sharing that hooking role and not necessarily playing the 80 minutes. That's okay. So just going in the back end of last year, and again, this was easy into finals, so maybe he's an 80-minute hook. I don't know what Craig Bellamy's going to do with him, but 53 minutes in round 26 for 70 points. He played 66 in round 25 for 59 points. He played 59 minutes in round 24 for 110 points. So that's where I'm kind of like, if these guys are playing 20 minutes less, they're getting a spell. They then, in theory, probably run more. They're more energised when they're on the field. Does it make that much of a difference? Like, potentially it doesn't.
Looking back at Harry Grant's scores from last year, and, obviously in the preseason, we don't need to tell you who's a good SuperCoach player. You can tell that we try and find the things that are wrong with players, so you're aware of that sort of stuff. I try and find the negatives in players and work back from there. Just looking through Harry Grant's scores from last year, and I'm looking for his lowest scores, right? Scored 31 points against Manly in round 7. How many minutes do you reckon he played that game?
50.
80. His next lowest score, 34 against the Dolphins in round 12. How many minutes do you reckon he played in that game?
80.
80. His next lowest score, 34 against the Cowboys in round 14. Didn't play 80, but played 73 there. Newcastle, round 21.
Post-Origin, that one. I'll give him I'll let him off the hook.
Sure. Against Newcastle, round 21, 36. Played 80 minutes in that game as well. I'm not even trying to make this a negative about Harry Grant. It almost feels like 60 minutes is better for Harry Grant. They're his only scores sub 40, and in every single one of them, he played 80 or 73 minutes.
Yeah. He had and then on top of that, as I mentioned, the 110 in 59 minutes in round 24. I mean, I know it's not a major deduction, but 149 points against Parry in round 22, played 72 minutes. So he's still got a spell.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. I think that we need to shift our mindset a little bit on Harry Grant, and I am more than happy to admit I am the last one to do that. I hate my hookers not playing 80 minutes, but Harry Grant, he has got the runs on the board. For me, I just think that coming out of an origin period and whatnot, there will be better times to buy Harry Grant. I'm very high on another hooker that we'll talk about very, very soon. Are you thinking you'll start with him?
I'm getting closer and closer to it. I'm going back to 2022 as well. Pretty well played 80 minutes every game. In games that he didn't, played 75 minutes in round 23, 113. I know it's only 5 minutes less. I don't remember the reasoning behind it. It could have been HR or something. But he still had a 5 minute rest, and he came out, got 113, did that shift in his mindset to go, I've had a rest, I can run one out. I don't know, I might be clutching at straws. 70 minutes, that probably was a HIA based on the 10 minutes off, 62. I go back to, there's a game he played 63 minutes back in round 80 against Newcastle in 2022, and he scored 104 points. So you're like, maybe we're trying to find things to suit the narrative, but the point is, these games where he's playing 60 to 65, he's scoring arguably better. So maybe if he does share that hooking role, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, very. And you know what? You know the other thing I do like, and granted, he might share the hooking role, but who's he sharing it with? It's a Bronson Garlic. It's a Wishart. It's not like they have an out-and-out 9 out there that's fighting for 30 minutes. They're fighting for 15 minutes.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Which makes it a lot easier. I'm still leaning against starting with Harry Grant. I think I will look elsewhere. I think I will look to move to Harry Grant a little bit later on. But I do know from my experience with Harry Grant, as soon as, and it happened to me last year, as soon as you had him and he had one good score, I sort of went, oh.
People panicked.
Yeah, people panicked.
So he's priced on a 73-point average from last season. His last 4 seasons, he's averaged 73, 78, 74, 71. Pre-Origin last year, 11 or 12 games, whatever it might have been, he averaged 69.27. In 2022, leading into the Origin period, he averaged 85.6. To be, no, I won't say lock-in scores like that, but you probably are, with an upside of he can score tons. I'm leaning more and more towards him.
Let me ask you this. First few weeks of the season, plays the Penrith Panthers week 1. Down there at Amy Park, to be fair, but Penrith, never going to be an easy game. Even if Penrith starts slow, you know they're going to defend well. They started, I remember sitting here at the end of round 1, not here because I didn't have this space and this didn't exist. This was a vintage clothes shop, so we obviously weren't sitting here with Tim. But I remember sitting at Bloke in a Bar and everyone's panicking. Penrith have lost it. They'd conceded 24 points across 2 weeks to the Brisbane Broncos and to the team from England. They still defended well.
Yeah.
I believe we then went to Wagga a few weeks later. They lost to South Sydney. I think they conceded 14 points or something, Matty. It was a pretty low-scoring affair. So, you're still not going to get a heap of points. Melbourne played Penrith. They then played the Warriors, who the Warriors are a top 4 team. I don't think they're at that calibre, but I think it's not an easy matchup, in my opinion. They then played the Newcastle Knights at Newcastle. We know that they're decent. They then go into a bye, and then they play the Brisbane Broncos. It's not an ideal start.
Yeah, pardon me. Certainly not an ideal start. I'm just looking back to last year. I do think there's probably a sense of the Munsters about Harry Grant in that a good opposition he will live for. He knows he needs to. Penrith last year, round 18, he scored 73 points in 80 minutes, 58 in base that game, which is he based 45 last season, so well above. Did score a try in that game. in round 23 against Penrith in Penrith. 80 minutes, 59 in base. Like they're his two highest bases essentially of the season. He based 60 in round 1 last year against Parramatta. There was extra time. But yeah, 73 in that game. So yeah, I think he's good enough to overcome the opposition, live for it. But you do make a good point. Like it's a tough draw to start.
Yeah, and you have a look at the opposition that he's taken on in the first few weeks. He played Penrith twice last year. You're right, he scored a try in one of those games, got 70. The other game he scored 57. Newcastle, the back end of last season when they were going well at Newcastle, he scored 36 points. Yeah, it's an interesting one there. Brisbane took on them at Amy Park, 79. That was during the Origin period, to be fair. Had a 100+ score against the Warriors last year. I think that if he had a knockout draw where I'm going, fuck, the first 4 or 5 games, he could really blow it away. Probably changed a little bit for me. You're right. Started last season, he based 60 in the first few weeks. I think something we need to keep in mind over these first few weeks, and especially with your Vegas players, they're going to come back from Vegas with some incredible base stat numbers.
Yeah.
That are going to blow us away. It's not going to be the reality.
There's going to be a lot of red herrings from that Vegas
100%
games.
Yes. And hopefully that's the worst we get out of Vegas. So, yeah, Harry Grant, an interesting one. I'm leaning away from him at the moment, but I'm more than happy to admit I tend to get the coldest feet of all time the closer we get.
He's currently not in my team for the next bloke that we'll talk about. However, that could be a very temporary arrangement.
Yes, completely agree. All right, let's move to the next man on the list. Damien Cook's the next man on the list. Is that who we're talking about?
No.
You want to go JMK?
Go JMK.
All right, Jeremy Marshall-King, 639K. You're looking at about a 63-point average around that mark for him. I ran some numbers earlier in the year on Jeremy Marshall-King. In games where he plays 70+ minutes, he averages 69. So that's 4 points off the great Harry Grant. Jeremy Marshall-King, I think he's more likely to play 80 than what Harry Grant is, personally. But that Dolphin side, if we're assuming the halves will be SOS and young Isaiah Katoa, you have to fit Cody Nikorima in that side somewhere. So 14 looks likely. Whether that means Cody Nikorima actually comes on and plays 9 or not remains to be seen. Hopefully Wayne Bennett gives us some idea what he's going to do before then. But my experience with Wayne is that he will give us a giant fucking middle finger and let us work it out as we go. What I like about JMK is that when he's not on the field, the Dolphins look like what a first-year franchise side should look like.
I think Wayne, you could see last year in Marshall-King playing through what looked like injuries at different stages of the season and still killing it. Wayne knows how important he is to that team and to their attack, and he plays such a big role for them in attack. So it looks like the preference is to play him 80. Even when he had a hooker on the bench in games, he still tended to play him 80 minutes. And I said, I think Cody Nikorima will probably be there 14. Maybe he comes on and plays a bit of hooker, but there's also basically one injury in the entire back line, and Nikorima goes on and plays the rest of the game there. So Marshall gets his 80. So I'm with you. I think he's probably more chance of playing 80 than Harry Grant. He's really enticing. He did have a lot of attacking stats last season to bolster him up. He only had 2 tries, but a ton of try assists, made a ton of line breaks. Can he replicate that this year? I mean, potentially he can. And you got to remember with Marshall-King, spent, the majority of his career playing in the halves?
Yep.
So he's only going to get better, I think. The Dolphins are only going to get better. They've added some firepower to their pack. It's pretty tempting.
I love Jeremy Marshall-King. I remember when Canterbury signed Reid Marnie, and it felt so stupid to say, but I sort of thought to myself, have they won this? Are they better with Reid Marnie than what they are with Jeremy Marshall-King? And because at the back, I'm sure you guys remember his last season with Canterbury, he brained it at the back end. But it was, it's the back end of the season. Your season's over. You're not playing for anything. It's easy to get up in those games. Jeremy Marshall-King has come in and absolutely killed it for the Dolphins in games that it matters throughout the entire season. And you're right, mate, he has to do a lot of attacking stats to get them. But I look at the way the Dolphins play their footy. They play a very basic brand of footy, which is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is built off Jeremy Marshall-King. You add in a Tom Flegler to that side, even adding like Herbie and these guys, like they're just gonna have more momentum this year.
You can just imagine bit of broken defence off a kick return. Herbie takes a second run off a scoot, scampers through the middle of the field, fends a few off, gets a quick play ball, and just Marshall King going off the back of that, can't you?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I really like JMK heading into this year. The big worry is jersey 14. What's going to happen there? I'm assuming it'll be Cody Nikorima. Could be like a Harrison Graham, one of these guys. I still think whoever plays there, though, I think JMK, you can lock him in for at least 65, if not more.
And as per Harry Grant, mate, maybe it's not a bad thing. Like Jeremy Marshall King is a running hooker. Maybe he's not conserving himself as much and he runs more. Maybe not. But
Quite possibly. Yeah, no. I don't hate it. I feel like JMK is one of those nines. He gets better the longer the game goes. That's how I've always felt about him. But, could go either way. He's got the Cowboys week 1 at Suncorp Stadium. He then goes the Dragons into a bye, into the Titans. God, it sucks that our two best hooker options have buys in the first
very annoying
4 weeks.
And I sat there, that's why I said I've got Marshall King in my team at the moment. Then I look at the prices and I go, it's 110 grand to go Marshall King up to Harry Grant. It's not that much money in the grand scheme of things. And I think, realistically speaking, and I want Harry Grant in my team, and I'm going, I probably want to go Marshall King to Grant at some point. But then you think, right, if I start with Marshall King, by the time, maybe their prices begin to match, we're getting towards Origin, and you go, do you just stick with Marshall King? You probably do. So then you go, I'm not going to have Harry Grant till after Origin.
Yeah.
I don't really want to go 19, 20 rounds without Harry Grant.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I don't mind the draw. Cowboys week 1, which I'm looking at that going, that'll be a hard game, but we don't really know what we're going to get out of the Cows. I think all teams will be up early, but then he goes, as we said, Dragons, bye, Titans, Tigers. Pretty enticing.
Yeah, good games.
There are some pretty good games in there for JMK. If there's any part of the year where you throw draw out the window, it probably is the first few weeks, to be fair. But I think that's very, very appealing for JMK. We spoke briefly about Damien Cook before. It wasn't really appealing to me regardless, if I'm being completely honest, but with Pete Mamazelos, Pistol Pete the other day re-signing on a 3-year contract, that has red flags all over it for me. What are your thoughts on Cookie?
I mean, let's assess him from two perspectives. There being Mamazelos, non-Mamazelos. Let's say, for argument's sake, Sleeva Havili is the utility on the bench and Mamazelos doesn't play.
Yep.
And we're expecting Cookie to be 65 to 80 minutes. He averaged 65 last season, and in that, there weren't a lot of attacking stats. And you could say, all right, he's getting a little bit older and all that, and they're going to regress, but he was still the Blues hooker last season. 3 tries, 9 try assists. I think they both improve this season. Mm-hmm. He averaged 75 in 2022, 65 this year, which was his lowest in 5 years. He's averaged over 73 times in the last 5 years. Look, I'm leaning towards not, and then you add in the Vegas factor, getting a little bit older, probably not, but, I mean, I can make a case for him.
I can make a case for him, but I don't think it's going to be the one for me. I think the other thing you need to consider is that Hooker is so fucked at the moment, so hard to work out, that if you go Damien Cook and we get to Vegas and he plays 60 minutes and Havili comes on or Mamazelos comes on, it means that the week after, when you potentially could go another hooker, you've already got one spot locked.
Yeah.
Which for me is not very appealing. I would rather have a little bit more flexibility. If it means that the week after and I wasn't keen on Harry Grant, nothing else pops up and I have to go Harry Grant,
Yeah.
so be it. It is what it is. But I would not be locking in Damien Cook going to Las Vegas that early.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to make a case for him when there's a low chance I'm going to start for him. I can see why people would, but Vegas turns me off so many players.
Yeah. We've spoken a lot, mate. The term 80-minute hooker has come up quite a bit. Blake Brayley looks to be a very likely candidate to take home 80 minutes. For me, and my argument's always been with Blake Brayley, especially in the draft world as well, people get overly hyped about him. It's all good and well to be playing 80 minutes. If you're not scoring the fucking points, though, I don't care. I do not care. And For me, Blake Brayley is kind of that guy. He always ends up with a decent little average. But for me, you have a look at the last few years. Blake Brayley, last year, the first 5 games of the season, he averaged 49. Solid, but, we're going to talk about a couple of Parramatta blokes who are averaging about that as well. You have a look, in those first 5 games, he only had 2 games where he scored over 50. His last 8 games of last season, he averaged 52. He had 5 games from those 8 where he scored under 50. Starting hooker, that is just not good enough for me. I can't do it.
Well, that's it. You look at the start of the season, where is there value in players who are going to go up in price? Give or take, if you're going out and out gunning like Harry Grant, sorry, mate, you go, I'm dying over here.
Yeah, you're having a good show. It's good stuff. Blake Brayley, probably not for me. Charge down on the camera. Love your work. He's in fine form here. This is great. Blake Brayley, not for me. There's too many low scores in him. I think that he is he's not a terrible option, but I don't know what you're going to gain. You want to be able to gain something out of your hooker, and he just doesn't do it for me. How are we feeling?
Good, mate. How's that? I'm back. Did you dribble on all right while I was gone?
Yeah, it was
Beers
a
and
battle.
break-evens every week does it to me.
I know it does, yeah.
The other ones are all good.
We
But
sat out there for 40 minutes talking. You didn't cough once.
Beers just destroys me.
He's not a bright lights footballer,
Beers-
guys. I've said it for years. Big stages, bright lights, not for Timmy Williams.
Blake Brayley, where were we? Brayley, that's it. You look for value in... Jeez, how good do I sound? You look for value in players to increase in the season. Like, is anyone getting more minutes? Do their sides look any better? For Blake Brayley, he's played 80 minutes the last 3 years and averaged 57, 59, 49. I rate Blake Brayley as a footballer. I think he's great. But SuperCoach-wise, I'm going, he needs to improve a lot, and he's not getting any extra minutes to be SuperCoach relevant, so I'm just not that keen.
Yep, completely agree. Okay, let's move to Wade Egan. Had a very good season last year. There's a Lussick floating around over there now. I can't even consider it, really. I see some people playing with Wade Egan and I ask them why, and they really can't. I think you're just outthinking the room here, personally.
Yeah, and I know that last week I said that I was not going to look into injury concerns too much when considering players this season. But far out, that bloke can get an injury.
Yeah.
Never anything major, just little things that will keep him out for a week here or there, or that'll see him leave the field. Very good footballer. The Warriors were outstanding last season. Can they back it up this season? I don't know. Time will tell. But I'm just not keen on him.
Yeah. Wade Egan also suffers from a thing that I believe they called guru-itis, which is where you're too tough for your own good. Poor bugger. All right.
I've heard it all.
Let's move to Appy. He was in at the studio the other day. Lovely fella. Surprised me, Matthew, how tall Appy was. He looks like the smallest guy on the field every time I see him. And then he got in here and he was casting a shadow over me, which was pretty rattling.
Yeah, that took me by surprise as well. But he's his personality suits how he plays though.
Yes.
I feel.
Yeah. Very relaxed, but you can tell he's got that real competitor in him.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Appy got the bye week 1, which doesn't help the cause. Once again, we don't need guys to play 80 minutes. I reckon he's a decent sniff too. They've got Talon De Silva there. Very talented young guy who I think will be the future 9 there. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets a gig on the bench. Depending on how this all lines up, they could end up with a Bud Sullivan on the bench. There's a number of ways it could go there. I think, mate, and you spoke a lot about it pre-show, so I hand over to you now. Goal kicking is the key, isn't it?
If he's goal kicking, he interests me.
Yeah.
Even then, the concern is he any good at goal kicking? From what we've seen in the past, not overly.
He's one of those guys with me that he looks very shit when he's goal kicking. The eye test says not a good goal kicker at all. But if they're going over, gives a fuck.
Like the first 2 games, he could easily go 1 from 5, 0 from 4, done, doesn't kick again all season.
Yeah.
And like my initial thoughts when we started speaking about Appy was, all right, like in his minutes, if he does share with, say, Talon De Silva or Simpkin and he plays 60 minutes, I'm like, oh, he's a ball running hooker. It could easily benefit him. I am going through his stats from last year. 68 minutes for 63, 60 minutes for 51, 57 minutes for 40, 61 for 34, 68 for 35. On that sample size, not great.
Yeah.
look, if he's goal kicking, I don't think he's too important to that side, so he's not going to play, I don't think, anything less than 60.
Yeah.
80 would be a bonus. If he's not goal kicking, not a chance. If he is goal kicking, maybe they also start the season with the bye, so it's a bit awkward. I suppose the beauty of the bye is that, you know, if one of you starting or your reserve hooker for round one doesn't perform, you can always flip them to Appy come round 4 if he is kicking goals and playing well.
Yeah.
But just need to see a lot from the trials.
I even think with goal kicking, there's going to be a lot of times where Appy lets you down.
That's it. Like it's all good and well to be a goal kicker. You still got to be half right at it.
Yeah, and you got to be scoring tries to kick goals, which we don't know as well.
And then the other thing I look at is playing behind that dominant forward pack at Penrith that had some of the best go forward in the game for years. 2022, he's still only averaged 63. 2021, 55. 2020, 66. The numbers weren't that good at Penrith.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. You have a look at his scores last year, you know, across the entire season. And, you know, there are a couple of injury-affected games in there and whatnot, averaged 56 points. Should be noted, and it doesn't really change a stack, to be fair, but he played halfback in 2 games towards the back end of the season. That was the Manly game and the Dolphins game, scored 66 and 79. So 2 games above his average as well. So take that into consideration. But to his credit, he had a 10-minute game against the Titans where he scored 9 points. So probably evens out a little bit there, but just something to keep in mind with Appy.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to one of our favourites, Reece Robson. Obviously had a huge 2022. People got very hot and heavy for Reece Robson. Came into 2023, and I think we were both pretty vocal that despite this unbelievable draw the Cowboys had to start the season, he isn't a score 11 tries in a season hooker. Last year, off the dome, I think he scored 2 to 3 tries, something along those lines.
3 tries.
3 tries. I think he'll be a 2 to 5 try a season hooker moving forward. So keep that in mind. I think that opening season when the Cowboys were flying and he was doing everything, I think teams have worked Reece Robson out a little bit. He's still a great NRL 9, love him, but SuperCoach-wise, I still believe he gets overhyped a little bit. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, not super keen on him. I think we touched on briefly last week that, you know, more keen on him this season despite dropping his average 9 points from 22 to 23. And that's because he had all the attack the year before. Last season, he had 9 try assists, 3 tries, as you said. So I do think he can improve on that. Certainly the try category, not substantially. I'm with you. Maybe 5-6 try a season hooker.
Yeah.
The factor will be like the Cowboys were pretty disappointing last year, particularly early on in the year. It's a really good side this year. I believe they have a pretty decent draw to start the year. I need to look into it a little bit further. Heaps of depth in the forward pack. A few blokes hopefully coming back. Taumalolo, Lukey, Nanai, a bit fitter, fresher, who had the injury concerns last year. It's a good team. So if they do get a bit more roll on this year than we saw last season, maybe he can improve. But, like, he based 45 a game, which is pretty solid. I think he'll be that 55 to 60 averaging hooker for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And I kind of want more upside.
It's not a bad start to the season. Played Dolphins week 1. Week 2, they played the Newcastle Knights up in North Queensland. Round 3, they take on the St George Illawarra Dragons, followed by the Broncos, Titans, Eels. So sort of middle of the ground, I would say. Maybe slightly favoured towards Reece. But, yeah, if your argument for bringing him in to start the season is, but he averaged this in 2022, I can't. I can't buy those stocks.
Outlier
That's
year.
not for me. Yeah.
You now add in origin concerns and, you know, even if he does do well, you're probably not holding him long-term anyway. There's just a few things.
All right, Reed Marnie. I never had him last year. A lot of you got trapped into it last year and, God, it was enjoyable for me to watch. I would have enjoyed it heaps more if Sonny Luke wasn't sitting next to me the entire fucking year. But Reed, great NRL hooker, SuperCoach. His scoring is actually fucking bizarre.
It's weird.
I feel like the more I look into it, the less I understand.
There's such a good SuperCoach player in Reed Marnie somewhere. I just don't know where.
Don't know where.
I got suckered in last year, and you know what? I felt confident doing so. I'm like, I thought he had a decent work rate. He ended up basing 38 per game last year, which is ranks quite lowly. Like, you sit there and go, he just throws himself at everything in defence and makes a bunch of tackles, but he also misses a shitload. And when you're missing 8 tackles a game, well, that's dropping your base stats from 46 to 38.
Yeah.
And he seems to go on runs where he gets attack and gets his line breaks, but he's so hard to predict, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like, he averaged 68 back in 2021. I know that was a big scoring season, but I'm with you. I find him hard to gauge.
Yeah, he's not a guy I want to try and gauge or try and work out in my side. I'll happily watch him from the sidelines and keep an eye on him, but I think you're mad to even consider.
I can so easily see him coming out and averaging 80 across the first 3 rounds and people getting sucked in and us having this conversation just going, is it the same as last year? Probably. But, you know, after I think I bought him last year and he might have had 1 to 2 good weeks and then it just went all downhill from there. And I was just sitting there watching going, I can't do this again.
Yeah. I think as well, the other thing that could potentially hurt Reid Marnie is that they've now got a squad of 30 in which 27 of them can play every position on the field. So if anyone needs a spell, Reid Marnie potentially first, whether it be Kurt Mann, Jake Turpin. I mean, like, we're all laughing and joking about the amount of utilities they've got. Beyond Iota's back from injury too.
Yeah, that's so many.
Like, they are just, hard pass on Reid Marnie. Lachlan Croker, obviously not a guy that's overly Supercoach relevant. We won't spend too much time on Lockie. Seems like a great fella. Not a great Supercoach player with Gordon, I would assume, coming onto the bench, or Humphreys. I probably wouldn't go near Lachlan Croker. I think the only person who was picking Lachlan Croker for round 1 might have been Lachlan Croker.
Or me.
Regardless.
Big Lockie Croker fan. Yeah. Shout out to him. We won't spend much time on him because he's not Supercoach relevant, but he is one of the great blokes in the game.
100%.
Are we thinking Gordy Jags a bench spot?
I think it sounds like there's Gordon Chan come Tong and there is a fellow named Jamie Humphreys, I believe. I think one of them will jag a bench spot. I would be going with Gordy personally.
What about an interesting one that I haven't seen thrown about too much, like probably for good reason, but like, I've always been a bit of a believer in Carl Lawton. Like, I think Carl's a good footballer. He's also quite versatile and can cover that hooker spot if they want to play Lockie for, say, 60 minutes. I thought he was good when he played at stages last year and then he had a season-ending injury around 17. Like, could he be the 14, do you think?
I don't think he will be, but I love Carl Lawton as well. You know who Carl Lawton is? He is Louis Brown reincarnated.
Yeah.
He can play a range of positions. You know, if he gets into dummy half, he's never going to pass the fucking football. Yeah. He loves a scoot close to the line. They are the best thing about Louis Brown and the best thing about Carl Lawton is that they're hard to defend because Carl Lawton doesn't know what Carl Lawton's going to do.
Yeah.
And I love those little wild cards. If I'm DCE, though, it would shit me to no end.
Yeah, built like a brick shit house. And that's why Lockie Croker's so perfect for Manly and like for DCE, who's the star of the show because good service, knows his role. But yeah, I don't mind Carl Lawton. I think he's a good footballer. Yeah.
He's just worth having in your team, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Lockie Croker shares minutes with Gordy this year would be my tip.
Yeah.
Mate, let's run through some names. Chris Randall, nothing to touch on here, right?
No.
500K, played as a middle when they had injuries last year. Tough as nails, not an option.
Yeah.
Brandon Smith, 471K. Coming into last year, I don't think either of us started with him.
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I don't think I did, but I quite possibly could have. I just not going to play 80 minutes. I think that when he comes off the field, yeah, he could turn into a middle, but they've got so many fucking middles. It is just ridiculous. Me and Matty were at we were with Connor Watson a few weeks ago, and he was saying that he would sub and play a bit of hooker. It's going to be a job share sort of thing there. Brandon Smith just doesn't interest me. And am I worried about Brandon Smith going to Las Vegas? Short answer, yes. I'm worried for Las Vegas, not for Brandon Smith.
Long answer, absolutely yes. Yeah, I mean, again, another one when I'm looking at the number 9s and I thought, going through, I thought, oh, geez, he had a pretty poor Supercoach-wise last year. He was going to start cheap. He does that, starts at 471K, pretty close to bang on what he started at last year. He averaged 58 minutes. He's not going to play more than that this year.
Nope.
So I don't there's not a lot of appeal there. It's crazy 12 months on, the difference in the conversation we've had. because I was so keen on him last year, and just as we've said time and time again on this podcast, his points from seasons past, 68 average in 2021, we're playing 13.
Yeah.
So
Also similar to Reece Robson, scored 12 tries that year.
yeah, and the Roosters are stacked with depth. It is incredible.
Yeah.
So, and then like Connor Watson, Sandon Smith, there are so many options they've got. So he's not going to improve on 58 minutes. So no.
Yeah. Phoenix Crossland. Should we talk about this as a little package deal, the two Newcastle hookers? So we got Phoenix and we got Jaden Brayley, of course. I know Phoenix is the hot stuff at the moment because he's such a good-looking fella, as Timmy said pre-show. But when you consider rewind 12 months ago, Phoenix Crossland was a halfback that was kind of playing 13, kind of playing hooker. Jaden Brayley was the club captain. How quickly it all changes. I remember I was so fucking hard for Jaden Brayley coming into last season. Obviously got injured, and Phoenix came in and, with all due respect to Jaden Brayley, I'm not sure if he could have done a better job than what Phoenix did. It was incredible, wasn't it?
Had such a good year out of nowhere, Phoenix Crossland last year. And we all sort of thought when he started spending more and more time at hooker, how far can the Knights go with Crossland playing number 9, playing out of position, and he was just terrific. And as we know, made a charge into the finals, second week of finals. Second week? Third week? Second week. Crossland was amazing, which we expect, I think, him to be 14 this year. Jaden Brayley starting 9. Early on, as Brayley gets eased back, are we thinking a 50-30 split?
I think so, but yeah, I don't know, mate. Phoenix played some really good footy last year. Like I think it's more likely Brayley's the starting 9, but if we get to round 10 and Phoenix is starting and Jaden Brayley's coming off the bench, that's not going to blow me away.
It'd blow me away. I'd be very surprised. You were Jaden Brayley's biggest fan this time last year.
I was, but I was so impressed with Phoenix. Like, we got to the back end of last year, Phoenix was a top 5 hooker for me.
Yeah.
Form-wise, he was.
Yeah, he was very good. I just think Brayley will hold up defensively better in the middle and just better service from number 9. So I think I can't see him losing that spot. I think he'll start as a 50 minutes Brayley as he eases back to full fitness.
Yep.
I don't know what's going to happen from there. It'll depend on Crossland's form.
Yeah,
what's going to happen from there.
And you know what? 4 weeks into him playing hooker last year, Phoenix, I was going, the bloke can't pass more than 5 metres. They can't keep doing this. But towards the back end of the season, I didn't see it. He's now going to spend an entire preseason as a hooker. Like, I think Phoenix only gets better. It'll be an interesting one. I think, though, at 470K, we can put the red Sharpie through Phoenix.
Oh, absolutely.
Least.
Yeah.
Jaden Brayley. Cheaper, obviously. A guy that a lot of people are very keen on. I agree with you. I think he is more likely to earn that starting role. And if he plays 55 minutes, as we know, Timmy, with players, especially a guy like Jaden Brayley, like if he knows he doesn't have to go for the entire 80, he's going to go hard for that 50 minutes. He's going to get through a heap of work, probably take a few more runs to have a bit more impact during that period. Priced at about a 32 average, he can blow that away.
He can. He's a really intriguing one because 330K, if he plays 50 minutes for the first 5-6 rounds, there's not going to be enough value there. If he gets to 60-plus minutes, it's a no-brainer. And I think there's every chance he does become a 60-plus minute hooker again, but with his injury history and the way Phoenix played last year, it might take 7 or 8 rounds or 6 rounds, which is a pretty long time. So in terms of 80-minute numbers, I don't think they're overly relevant just yet, but for the record, 3 games, 80 minutes last year, 52 points per game. In 8 games in 2022, he missed the first 3 quarters of the season due to injury. He averaged 57.75. In the final 5 games of that year when he was back to full fitness, he averaged 70 per game.
Yep.
In 2021, played 80 minutes basically the whole year, averaged 59. So the numbers are good, but again, they're on 80 minutes. So I think it'll be a lot of preseason word, try and get it out of the Knights and find out what is the plan with Jaden Brayley, what minutes is he going to play and how many do you want him to play once he is back to full fitness. But I'm a bit torn at the moment, to be honest with you.
I think that Newcastle situation is kind of one that I want to avoid. I was keen on Brayley a few weeks ago, but the closer it gets, the more I think about it. wouldn't it just suck if you if we watch Jaden, if you have to put up with the first 4 to 5 weeks of him playing lesser minutes to ease himself back into it, like you might have to wait 12 weeks to get 150K.
Slow burn, and if he's playing that 50-minute role, you can't really play him in your team because there'll be 30s in there.
Slow burn, but on the bright side, it won't be slower than the 28 weeks you waited to lose 10K on Sonny Luke last year. So not
Can
a
always
shocking
be worse.
result. It's actually a huge win all of a sudden.
Yeah. So the more we speak about him, the colder I get. If he comes out and brains the preseason, it'll change my mind.
Yeah, completely fair. Sammy Verrills, more of the same as I see with Lockie Croker, Reid Marnie, just not for me.
Yeah, no.
The next guy on the list is a big one that we need to talk about. Obviously, was a hero in my season, Jacob Little. Brought him in last year, did a great job for me. Why did I bring him? I don't know. I don't recall why I did that. But I sure as fuck did it. And he had some big scores for me, which was great.
Between Sloan, Little, you had some rogue Dragons players out of nowhere. I think it was just to piss me off, and you succeeded. You succeeded with Little to a degree. The Sloan one backfired. Who's going to be the left field Dragon for you this year?
Might be Flano.
Flano.
Talk about him soon. Although I do love myself a Lomax at fullback.
Yeah, it's enticing, isn't it?
It is very enticing. So Jacob Little, Billy Walters, Ray Stone, Mitch Kenny. Pull me up on anyone that interests you. Connor Watson. I will say this about Connor. I was having a look at some numbers the other day. When he came off the bench last time for the Sydney Roosters under Robbo, averaged about 50 coming off the bench. Very different squad now with a lot of middles. I don't know about it, but even if he plays 30 minutes at hooker, if this Roosters team is humming like we're expecting them to, same as we did in 2023, 2022, 2021 and 2020, Watson could be interesting, but it's a little bit too much of a punt for me.
Yeah, could be the most purchased player by like round 8.
Yeah.
But he needs to get minutes under his belt again. You know, a lot of injury concerns in recent years. Has to get through those. The depth in the squad. So definitely not start with him, but we could be having some really big conversations about him 6 to 8 weeks into the season.
Yeah, he'll probably also have a really tough time with girls in Vegas.
He will battle, yeah.
Actually, I think he's in a relationship, isn't he, Matty? Yeah. Sorry, Connor.
Sorry, Vegas women.
We've got Havili, Tom Starr. Oh, Raiders hookers, great. Let's talk about your 7 Raiders hookers. What's doing?
So have we locked Danny Levi into our team? Or?
Fuck. Oh, God, this is rank. Just don't even look at them, right?
I mean...
Ricky Stewart doesn't want to look at them. I'm not looking at them.
Woo a little bit. Supercoach-wise, no, we're not touching him, but...
Welcome back to our Supercoach show.
Bit of respect.
Go.
No, I've got nothing. Just show the Mills some respect.
Be generous and kind. Love that.
What's Zach Wolford done to hurt you?
I'm actually a huge Wolford guy. Okay, let's move to the Parramatta boys. Interesting conversation. Obviously, the coach came out the other day and said that he wants to have 2 80-minute hookers, one 80-minute hooker. He's going to play 2 of them.
Which one's playing halfback?
That's a good gig. 1 80-minute hooker. Mate, I wouldn't trust Brad Arthur's team selections as far as I could throw him. I'm not a big thrower sort of guy. He tends to go rogue with a lot of his selections, a lot of the way that he uses his bench and everything. I look at these 2 and I don't believe either of them are 80-minute hookers.
It's interesting. And this is where I'm sitting with, because there are so many question marks around blokes we've mentioned, and these 2 Eels hookers are right up there with it. I'm thinking like start the year with the safety of be it Grant, Marshall King, whoever it might be, and then just find whether it's your Hands or Brayley or whoever it might be, the cheaper option. And then if 2 of them start to kill it, you can always downgrade like a Grant or someone to whoever's killing it if it happens. But I feel a lot more comfortable doing that than being stuck with like a Brayley and Hands combination or Lussick. Look, if it unfolds as Brett Arthur said and one of these guys gets an 80-minute role, sure, great Supercoach buy and get their 80 minutes. But I'm with you. I'm so far from convinced. And I'm also like, if one of them does come out and play 80 minutes the first 2 rounds, and doesn't perform, or the other one comes in and they played him into the other one based on what Arthur said, gets dropped.
Yeah.
So,
and you know what? I know everyone in the comments will be going, yeah, putting the quote from the coach. I get it. And this is the exact same situation we said all last year with the Warriors. The coach said, we're not going to rest at the end of the season. We said, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. We can't see that playing out. Of course, we get to the last round, everyone's losing their mind because the Warriors rest all their players.
yeah.
This one it just doesn't make sense to me. Neither of these two are 80-minute caliber hookers, in my opinion. It's not the direction I would be going in, and I will not be shocked. I don't understand a coach that weekly chooses not to use one of his front row forwards or uses one of them for 8 to 10 minutes. Why he wouldn't just carry the second hooker?
Yeah.
We sort of had this discussion on Monday, obviously, so we're going around.
Yeah, and two things. For starters, since when have coaches ever been transparent, especially to super coaches, which they don't give a rat's about? And secondly, much like SuperCoach, where we pick our first team at the end of January, so much is going to change over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So there's every chance that he has 2 hookers or whatever it might be come round 1. So lots to play out there.
And you're exactly right. We could get 4 or 5 weeks in. We could get 2 weeks in, as you said, and they swap the hookers.
Exactly.
And then you're fucked.
And look, if someone comes out the first 2 weeks and kills it and scores well, easy downgrade at the price. Brendan Hands, 56 points per game, 5 games last year, 80 minutes. Joey Lussick, 3 games, 47 points per game. So the numbers are solid if there's assurance in the role. And I'm not saying I won't start with one of these guys, but I'm very tentative this far out.
Yeah, I'm very...
Do you currently have any of an Eels, Hooker or Brayley in your team?
I have Jaden Brayley currently,
Yeah.
but I haven't touched my team in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So, but I'm cooling on Brayley rapidly.
Yeah.
And you know what? It might end up being that one of these para boys is the best option come round 1. But even if so, I'm still far from convinced this is how it all works out. But if everyone goes a Parramatta hooker and we're all going to be in the same boat, I will sort of go, okay, sure, I'll follow my sword and see what happens here. But yeah, I'm far from convinced. Got anyone else on this list, mate? I'm going down there. Scroll past Sonny Luke, Jake Turpin. You've obviously got Mamazelis, 243K, could come off the bench for the Bunnies. I just don't think the minutes will be there to make it worthwhile.
Absolutely not. And it's just the hooking position, you never wish an injury upon anyone. But, if there's an injury to Appy Coruscant, to Billy Walters, to Damien Cook in the preseason, we're all of a sudden locking in Mamazelos, I'll get there one day, Blake Moser, Talon De Silva, so many options that will make the hooking position so much easier. But as it stands now, anyone below who we've spoken about, the minutes aren't going to be there.
Yeah. I think, as you said, mate, even like a Gordon Chan come Tong, if something was to happen to Lockie Croker, he could come in. Outside of that, there's just nothing else really doing here. If I had an ideal situation, and you never, ever want to wish injury on someone, but geez, if Blake Brayley was to go down and we get Jaden Beryl at 204K, that would be dream come true stuff. Mate, that's all of our hookers we've gone through there. Let me ask you this last one. If we get to round 1 and Blake Moses the 14 for Brisbane, he's got attacking upside. The starting hooker, whoever it is, in my opinion, isn't like an all-star hooker. I would reckon that'll lock Blake Moser in for, I would say, 25 to 30 minutes with the potential to get more, I think. Could he interest you at all?
No. Not unless he's starting. I just think, again, you add in Vegas trip, Brisbane have a really tough draw the first 5-6 rounds to start the season. And, Brisbane just made a grand final last year with Billy Walters as the 9. He'll be playing his 50 to 60 minutes, you'd imagine. There's also that many number 9s at Brisbane to go around. So how long does he last as the 14 if he does? So, no, he'd have to be starting for me to consider.
Yeah.
You?
No, I for a moment there, the CBA side of me got a little bit excited that he's got upside. But you are right. I didn't think about the draw. I didn't think about Vegas, which kind of shits on all that. 100%.
When we get outside of straight rugby league talking getting into SuperCoach, that's where I come in, where I pull the CBA out of you and say, mate, come back to reality. We're talking SuperCoach here.
All right. Is that hookers?
You've rung the bell, mate. I think it is.
Run the bell, yeah. We had some questions sent in by you guys. I haven't gone through and actually put those questions in, but we've just incorporated them into this space, covering all your questions. So next week we are going to do. What are you feeling? Front row forwards. You know, I wouldn't hate leaving front row forwards.
Yeah, we need to find more.
Yeah.
Why don't we?
Surprise me. What do you got for me?
I reckon we just let's get into the big one that everyone's asking. Let's get into fullbacks. Have a bit of fun.
Going.
It's going to be a fun episode.
Unreal. Yeah, let's get stuck into fullbacks. That'll be good.
We
fun.
might need to start recording 2 days early because there's a bit to talk about.
There is a bit to talk about. Jesus, some key guys.
Yeah.
There. Unreal. Since it opened, also guys, we haven't made a Beers and Break Evens League yet. We will probably do that this week.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll start to plug that up there. It'll all come. You won't miss out. Don't worry. Yeah, we'll have that next week for you. And anything else, mate? Oh, what did you do on Playbook last night?
Playbook, 4 club previews. Sharkies, Rabbitohs, Broncos, Mighty Raiders.
Yep.
Did that. Had a bit of a chat about what we learned last year. Myself, the Spy, mate of the Waterboy. Big involvement this year. Off the bench, we called it. Into a starting role, yeah. Starting role. So Matty was strong. Yes, all that good stuff. Just deep dived into those clubs and a couple of other little things. Dropped a super pod. We all picked a super pod for the season, and mine was a belter. I'll tell you off air. I want people to go watch it. I'll tell you off air.
Give me a hint. Give me a hint that only I'll get.
Holy moly. Just love putting me on the spot. I've got nothing for you.
Yeah, good. Great gear.
Without giving it away that only you know.
Okay. Matty, keep the camera on me. Matthew, on you for a second before we go.
Yes.
Have you opened the app yet?
The SuperCoach app?
Yes.
I actually did.
Oh, right.
I had a look yesterday before the show with Timmy.
Anything we said about hookers you disagree with, or who are you leaning towards?
Probably. I was looking at Marshall King, so I'm glad that you guys are high on him. So that's probably where I'm thinking at the moment, but I haven't put too much thought into it.
You haven't opened the app, have you?
No, I haven't opened the app. I've opened the website.
I don't believe him.
He's a new man this year, Matty.
It's actually
He's into it.
It's actually on my computer right now.
Mate, everyone's a new man in SuperCoach until we get to week 7.
I'll give you a tiny hint
Yep.
that people will probably not be able to get, and you might not even be able to get either, about who my superpod is.
Yeah.
Let's call him Capab Giraz.
I remember you not being overly high on him last year.
No, spare me.
Didn't I bring him in and then he got injured?
Yeah.
I think or maybe I started with him.
Yeah.
Maybe I brought him in early. Yeah. All right. We call it a day. Pull the plug.
Let's do it.
Thanks for coming. Guys, if you're on YouTube, subscribe, comment. Let us know which hookers you're looking at. Let us know in the comments. And we will see you next week for fullbacks. How fucking good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll have the Rook joining us next week. I'll give you the hot tip. The Rook would have gone Damien Cook for hooker and potentially Peter Mamazelos. So,
With a Villy in the yard. 2
really in the extendeds. Love that. Yeah. Unreal. All right, guys. We'll see you next week for fullbacks on Beers and Break Evens.